the show is really starting to expand beyond its boundaries of schedule and money. And at that time, we were just on the cusp of exploding into another kind of television show.
The mythology, quote unquote, was very undefined at that point. There had been some mythology episodes the first year of the series, but I don't think anybody really looked at it as mythology, if you will, at that point. What really began the mythology in earnest, or kicked it into a higher gear anyway, was when Gillian Anderson got pregnant at the end of the first season. They had to account for her absence. So the writers came up with the idea that she would be abducted by aliens.
Duane Barry was a difficult first assignment because most of it took place in one room in a travel agency, and so for a director, it's like filming a stage play. The night before I was going to direct, I had gone onto Rob Bowman's set, and he was shooting an episode called Sleepless. He was doing a very elaborate shot with a very perfect camera move, and the way he was lining it up and the way he was directing the actors, I realized that there was so much that I didn't know. But the day that I arrived and I set up my first shot and I yelled action and no one laughed, I knew that, you know, I was going to be okay.
No! Not again!
Steve Railsback was the perfect person for the part, and I had him in mind, not knowing whether or not I could get him at all. He was completely into the character.
Duane Barry was not whacked out. Duane Barry, I really believe this, and this is the approach I took. He was telling the truth.
You're just like all the others, aren't you?
Duane.
You say you believe me?
Duane, I do believe
but
you.
You don't.
I believe
you lie just like everybody else.
I believe you, Duane.
I mean, he had it up to here because he knew what had happened, and nobody believed him.
You think you know what Duane Barry's going through? You don't know Jack!
Actually, this happened. I was in an elevator, and it was kind of a crowded elevator, and this woman walks on the elevator. And all of a sudden, she just stops, and she just looks, she just stares at me. And then she turns to everybody and goes, Duane Barry. Duane Barry. She's telling everybody, and I'm going, yeah, thank you. And I'm trying to press my number. I'm hoping I'll get there, and they're getting off. And that's all she said. She just kept saying, I think it shocked her so much, she just kept saying, but Duane Barry. But not to me, to everybody else.
Second season is when I started to recur as this character, and I think it came about pretty much with Gillian's pregnancy and the fact that she was going to be gone for a bit.
As of right now, I'm reopening the X-Files. That's what they fear the most.
You know, they asked me if I wanted to keep coming back, and I said, well, yeah. A lot of my father seeped into the character because he had similar. He carried himself very similarly to the way Skinner does, and I think it's just having been around my dad so much when I was a kid and watching him in his working environment that it just and I didn't do it intentionally. It's just something that occurred, and I wasn't aware of until it was pointed out to me by my family. And this is after my dad passed away before I started doing the X-Files, sadly, because he would love being around for this.
I enlisted in the Marine Corps the day of my 18th birthday. One night on patrol, we were caught. And everyone fell. And everyone. I looked down at my body from outside of it. I didn't recognize it at first. I watched the VC strip my uniform, take my weapon. And I remained in this thick jungle, peaceful, unafraid. I woke in a Saigon hospital 2 weeks later. I'm afraid to look any further beyond that experience. You are not.
I didn't really think about it until I watched one episode, and I go, man, that's my dad. There was one take where I'm supposed to throw X up against the back of the elevator. I guess it wasn't violent enough, and Bowman said, heat it up a little bit. You looked a little weak there in that last shot.
We did a take, and it was sort of stunty. It was sort of like you grab him, and there's ways to fake hits, and I thought, well, these are the two grizzly bears, you know, and I don't know. They're both big dudes. I mean, both Mitch and Steven, I couldn't tell you 5 out of 10 times who's going to pull that one off. And so we did the take, and I went back to both of them, and I said, listen, I'm handheld. You can go anywhere you want. The camera will move out of the way, but I'd like one that's as close to full speed as you can do without getting. He goes, how about if we just do it?
So the next take, I threw him up against the thing so hard it knocked the back of the elevator out.
I got this part called the cigarette smoking man. I hadn't smoked for 20 years. I used to smoke. And actually, when I went on the set, they offered me real cigarettes or these herbal cigarettes. And I said, I'm an actor. Give me the real cigarettes. I can do that. So, you know, I did the first episode, and I smoked these real cigarettes, and everything went fine. And they called me for another episode, and same thing. I used the real cigarettes. And then I found myself sitting at home thinking, gee, sure wish X-Files had called me for another episode. And then I realized I can't do that. The key episode for me, I guess, was One Breath. I mean, that's where I really finally had, for the first time, really had a really big scene, which was when Mulder confronts me in my apartment.
Sit down! How'd you find Shut up! Tonight I ask the questions. You're gonna answer me, you son of a bitch!
Don't try and threaten me, Mulder. I've watched presidents die. That, in a way, was, the launching pad, I think, for the character, and everybody kind of went, oh, yeah, this is interesting now. I mean, we've established the devil. We can't kill the devil. If people were to know of the things that I know, it would all fall apart. And it became a real arc for the show. Normally, I'd been cast as kindly fathers and friendly uncles and warm-hearted people.
Krychek. Alex Krychek.
Nick Lee was a Canadian actor that I'd used in my first episode of Genderbender, and I thought was a really strong choice for sort of a fresh out of Quantico FBI agent, you know, chip on his shoulder kind of a guy.
At the time, Krychek was going to turn out to be bad. He'll be woven into the story for an arc, and if he works out, you know, great, and if not, he can always die.
Is there anything I can do?
Yeah. What's your name again?
Krychek.
Krychek. Have you got your notepad? Grande, 2% cappuccino with vanilla. Agent Rich?
The decision was made to have a very secretive character called X. The original casting involved a very fine actress named Natalia Nogulich. She wasn't bad. I mean, she was very good, but there was something about that character. I think Jim and Glenn and Chris decided that this wasn't the right chemistry. So we went back to the drawing boards after they'd shot the scene and came up with Steve Williams.
The truth is still out there, but it's never been more dangerous.
We had to figure out how to shoot his close-ups to match with the ones they'd already shot with David. And he went on to be this memorable character. And poor Natalia, who's a wonderful actress, is now a footnote in X-Files history.
Chris believes strongly in mining the power of the imagination, and that's what we do, kind of not only in the scripts, but visually and with a visual gag, you know. We actually shot in a wide doorway and then shrunk him down so that the doorway looked the right size and the alien looked real skinny.
All the little aliens are always done by little girls from a dance school, believe it or not, who wear these big foam rubber heads. They try to use boys, but the boys tend to like punch each other in the foam rubber heads and like break them and stuff, whereas little girls are just happy to sit around with big alien heads on them.
The key to making a guy in a rubber suit not look cheesy is more about what you don't show than what you do show, and it has to do with judicious angles and judicious lighting and sort of teasing the audience. I got a call from Chris Carter saying that he wanted me to direct one of the early episodes of the second season, and he said that the premise of it was about a half-man, half-worm. And I told my agent, and my agent said, if that's what they're doing, the show is not long for television, so maybe we should think of doing something else. So I guess he was wrong.
I remember when I got the script, thinking, okay, how does a fluke, half-man, half-fluke worm move? And I wanted to come up with some kind of creepy movement, like the creature from the Black Lagoon has a very particular way of swimming. The minute you see it, you go, oh my God, it's a creature from the Black Lagoon, we're all dead. Once I got into the suit, I realized that was irrelevant because my mobility was like limited to this. I'm Duff Luke, man. That was the most I could move. The thing was incredibly heavy. You couldn't breathe, couldn't talk. There was no hole for me to urinate. Sex was completely out of the question. I decided to relieve myself, went in the water because I figured Duchovny would never find out. He's never going to watch these things.
There was an episode called Emasculata, which was about a strange disease where people would get these big pustules that would then explode and they'd die these horrible deaths. And Rob BOWMAN directed that, and he came to me one day and he said, I knew I was directing the X-Files when I heard myself saying, I want the pus to go left to right.
One of the things I was trying to do was find a way to have plenty of exposure in absolute blackness. There was some xenon flashlights that were around that gave a tremendously powerful tunnel of light. And you can have blackness on the edges of the screen, and in the center you've got your two sort of surgical spotlights looking for things. In Sleepless in the Warehouse sequence at the end, we found that if we were to walk down a hall, have the actors walk down a hallway or anywhere, we could set these little pieces of tinfoil. You crush them up so that it's not a flat mirror, it sort of diffuses it. But the actors, so once in a while you say, well, right about here I'd like to see your face because basically you're a silhouette. So right about here, hit that flashlight through the thing, and it'll just splash light onto your face for a moment. And we'd set 4 or 5 of them down a hallway. And the actors were able to, while they're searching around, just hit that piece of foil and get a little exposure on their face, and that's where a little curious reaction there. We did that for many, many episodes, but that was the first episode that we bought these $7,500 flashlights.
My second episode was our first comedy. It was called Humbug. And I was rather nervous about being the chosen sacrificial lamb to direct the first comedy X-File that Darren Morgan wrote.
I had this hermaphrodite waitress character. It was a half man, half woman. Down the middle, a waitress on one side, a waiter on the other.
And for the lady?
Which is really funny on paper, but it just didn't work.
I'll just have some coffee.
So I had to cut that out.
While I was shooting Humbug, Jillian had to reach into a jar of crickets that the Enigma offered her and take one out and put it in her mouth. And then later in the sequence, she pulled it out from behind David's ear, sleight of hand. So Jillian got there in the morning. She said, I've already eaten one. And I said, pardon me? She said, yeah, me and the Enigma were hanging out, and I had me eat one. So I'll be darned if during the shot, I'm rolling the camera, and he offers her a jar of live crickets. She reaches in and puts it in her mouth, starts chewing it up, and walks out of the shot. Well, what people think is that she actually swallowed it. She didn't. She spit it out. But she did kill it because she chewed it up pretty good.
To do this kind of work this hopefully well, it's a sacrifice. I mean, it requires a lot of work.
We were all thrown together and got to know each other really well and have developed wonderful relationships over this period of time.
It was great to be a young filmmaker at the time and getting fabulous production experience, shooting fun stuff that I couldn't wait to see, let alone figure out how to shoot. It was cool stuff.
Toward the end of season 2, I realized that The X-Files was a bona fide big hit. I knew that we were onto something very special in television, something I don't think will ever happen again in television. It was exciting at the end of season 2 to realize that we could only get bigger and better from there. You don't get this kind of opportunity in TV, so it's like the career gift.